Howdy doody, everyone. Welcome to Steven Universe Revisit. I'm one of your hosts, Panda, currently fronting the friendly gesture Patches. And this is Alex.
Hello, everyone.
So today's episode is Season 1, Episode 27, House Guest. And this takes place, I'd say, immediately after the last episode, Ocean Gem. We discussed earlier how Ocean Gem felt really a lot like a season finale, which kind of makes this episode come across as sort of the first start of a second season of sorts. Would you say that, Alex? Because I was
think
kind
that's
of
a yeah. I think that's a good way to look at this episode.
It's about addressing any of the problems that came about, mostly focusing on Greg's side of things because him driving everyone there, his van and his leg got broken in the process of trying to deal with lapis lazuli, and we see that both of them are still broken when we start this episode. Pearl is overlooking Greg's pretty busted up van. The sides are dented. Like a bunch of things are shot. A bunch of other mechanical things that somebody who probably actually knows cars knows about. But this quirky little gesture has no idea because they want to go on public transportation. Greg, of course, being his usual self, who probably knows just about as much as cars as we do, recommends all the humans all fix all kind of tool, the duct tape wheel, which I've always wondered this, and I don't know if it's a coincidence or not, Alex. Have you ever have you ever stretched out some duct tape and the sound it makes vaguely sounds like a duck?
I've never likened it to a duck, but I do see where y'all are coming from.
Well, it certainly makes me go quackers. But because of Greg's broken leg, Pearl says that she'll fix the van with her own tools, and Steven suggests that Greg hangs out with them in the house while he recovers, which I can't remember if it was either Pearl or Amethyst, possibly Amethyst, but they recommend Steven heal Greg's broken leg with his magic healing spit, and Steven gets a big old licking and on his hands and smacks Greg's leg with it, and Greg's leg seems to still kind of be busted broken, which Greg apologizes and just says that he's just kind of a growing gem and all that. And the gems back home up. And this leads to Greg hanging out with Steven at the house, and they start a montage song of basically how much good old dad and son love each other. They're playing on their ukuleles before YouTubers used it in their apology racism videos. And they're just getting along and all that until disaster almost is about to strike, and the crystal gems announce that what is it exactly is it called? It is a sort of giant storm geode. Okay, it's just called the geode, and it's basically this rock holding a artificially made storm from escaping on the planet, and it's at the bottom of this crater. I don't know if this is the implication, but it looks like it was dropped there. I don't know if you noticed that, Alex. I think I heard a kitty cat.
Yeah, that's Velvet. But yeah, it does sound like it was dropped from the sky. It looks like it was dropped from the sky.
Yeah, it seems it's definitely. I could see either two ways. It could either be dropped from the sky, or the cloud that they said would instantly vaporize them actually was happening. They contained it and then it fell to the planet. But I don't fully know, and they don't exactly fully explain it. So we got one or two options, and maybe a secret third if you're leave a comment in the notes below. Come up with a third option. Uh, After that, right. But before they get there, Greg is very pathetically sort of talking about how, like, if he eats something while they're on their mission, he'd have to, like, drag himself to the fridge or something. And there's a very funny line from Pearl where she says, "Now, Greg, there's no reason to be so pathetic."
God, yeah, that was a great line.
And they give him a little flute to Teuton that will announce to I don't know if they specify to just the specific warp pad that was teleported to, or all warp pads. It seems to be later in the episode that it's implied that it has access to just warp pads in general. So who knows? But if you play music on it, it'll go through the warp pad that's nearest to you to the one you want to go through. And that's announced whenever Greg needs help. And obviously, this immediately gets slightly abused where Greg is like going to Steven. He calls her Steven, and Steven goes, "Oh gosh, Dad, what's the problem? What's the issue?" And he goes, "Steven, do you know where the remote is?" And Steven goes, "Well, that is a pretty big issue." Um, but it obviously goes too far as he keeps doing a little as they do their mission. Uh, and Steven, while figuring this all out, the gems ask him to heal the geode using his own healing spit that he tried using on Greg earlier, which he feels anxious about due to Greg not walking still and not having anything work quite right. And when he tries to use it, nothing happens. The geode doesn't fix itself, and Steven feels even more anxious about it. Uh, this leads the gems to sort of. Oh, there's a really funny line from Amethyst here, where when Steven comes back from Greg calling one more time, Amethyst goes says something like maybe Greg will fall over and like hurt his butt or something, and Garnet just says that's not funny, and Amethyst says, "I know."
There were a lot of great lines from the
Yeah,
gems in
there
this
were a lot of
episode.
it was great. I know it was a pretty straightforward premise, but they kind of really got their character worth out of it. I feel. I also like the moment when the crystal gems come back, saying that they need to like quickly come up with a new solution to the geode problem, and Amethyst just tries to reassure Steven, and it's just a nice, sweet moment that I really liked. Uh, Seemingly uh, accepting that Steven can't really help the situation, he tries to just help Greg a little more, and Greg asks for donuts. And Amethyst asks for a croissant because the croissant is very good. uh, Steven walks out, realizes, "Oh, I didn't ask Greg what kind of donuts he wants." Comes back in. Greg is just standing at the fridge getting food out of it, completely normal. He does a little pirouettes. He's fine. He's completely fine. He was fine the whole time. He was lying to Steven about his leg being broken, and there was absolutely nothing wrong. um, Steven is reason. It takes Greg like a good 10 seconds to realize how he screwed up here, which really indicates the level of like thought that was put behind this whole grand scheme of things. But when Steven tried healing Greg's leg back at the car wash, it did in fact work. He did get his leg healed, but Greg felt that he barely got any time to live with Steven anymore. And that is something that I do want to emphasize that he said, like, he used to live with Steven, basically. It is like just a blink and you miss it moment, but he's basically been shoved out of living with his own son by the crystal gems, and he was lying as a means to try to hang out with his own child more, which obviously doesn't justify why he did it, but like it, I do think it's a solid explanation, and it shows that what we'll do to get through our child, even if it's underhanded means. Uh, this then resolves itself where Greg, now realizing that Steven feels he can't use his healing spit powers because of that, like, kind of messing with his confidence in it, I guess is the best way to put it. Uh, Greg tries to take responsibility for it, uses the flute to go to the storm geode, and I don't exactly. Well, we do know what his plan was, but Steven follows so quickly after that Greg has a pep talk with him that, like, yes, he did absolutely heal his leg, so his healing spit should be fine. Steven tries it again, and it doesn't work again, which which makes me believe that the geode might just be like an artificial, as in like literally a machine, because uh and this is more us wondering in the future, Alex, but did we ever see Steven heal a non-organic being with his spit? Like,
Yes.
oh, okay. And I'm not talking about like gems. I'm talking about like, I don't know, a stuffed animal or something.
Oh, no.
That's what I was wondering. Like, if Steven used his healing spit on a car, which has no, which like it's broken, it can't fix that, I imagine.
No.
So that's the understanding that I'm working with the geode, is that it is literally just a machine. There is nothing alive, organic, or anything of that nature. It is
That
purely mechanical in nature.
that does appear to be the way we're supposed to read the scene, yes.
Yeah, and and that's why it resolves itself where Greg's backup plan comes up, where, calling back to the start of the episode, Greg pulls out that roll of duct tape and just uh, puts it over the crack that was forming, and everything just kind of resolves itself. And the storm stops, the sky goes clear, and the rumbling stops. Um, and Greg fixes it with Steven with a little bit of that magic duct tape touch. Um, then we cut to the end of the episode where we go back to Pearl, who has fixed his car beyond all human belief and has basically already memorized. Like she mentions that like he shouldn't use clutch 2 or whatever so much to make sure that his mileage is good. So she has already memorized perfectly how cars work immediately. Uh, so that's wonderful. Greg hugs her and she recoils in disgust, which is always lovely from her. And the episode ends with Greg moving back out into his van, which is just parked on the beach in front of the house anyway. And Steven says, Steven, with the duct tape now on his bedside shelf, goes, "Good night, Dad." And Greg in the distance goes, "Good night, Steven." And then the episode ends. So, apparently, this episode is about the magic of duct tape.
Apparently so.
uh, I thought that this was. I do genuinely like this episode. It was interesting because like Greg is lying to Steven and he is like being a bad parent in this moment, but I do appreciate how his intentions are mostly pure, even if he is like messing up. And again, I discussed it where he does attempt to take responsibility for him, like taking advantage and messing up a situation. I don't know if the kid. We've seen adults in Steven Universe be like off or wrong or dumb about certain things. Yeah,
Or be
but
Mayor Dewey.
we're being Mayor Dewey, Mayor Dewey. uh, but sometimes I do think it's good to acknowledge here and there about how your own parental figure can just lie to you and be dumb about things too, and sometimes you gotta take a stand and call them out on it. And not in the same way the crystal gems are, because they feel like caretakers, but not like Steven's parents in a lot of respects. Kind of like his aunts is a good way I put it.
Yeah.
Um, well, yeah, I think it again. We were discussing how the episode feels like a hypothetical season two, which is obviously there, but also not there at the same time. And I do think that this is a good reintroduction to Steven Universe, which I actually want to see. I want to see right now what the distance between the last episode and House Guest was. I'm going to look that up right now because I think it's important to start discussing the time gaps between episodes. Wouldn't you say that, Alex?
I think that is a good idea, yes.
Okay, so Ocean Gem was on September 25th, 2014, and House Guest was October 2nd, 2014. Okay, this wasn't a distance at all. This wasn't this experiment didn't go anywhere, but I swear
It will.
it will go in the future. In Steven Universe future. It will go somewhere. I'm going to start looking. We are going to start looking at the air dates of things and trying to keep track of that because I think that this is around the time it started happening. But I'm also just completely speculating. And I need a drink of water. Alex, do you want to say anything?
I have a couple of notes. Greg's singing voice. It might get better later on in the series, but I am not particularly a fan of Tom Schlarping's like singing. Which,
No wonder Greg's musical career went nowhere. That's really I'm sorry. I don't think it's like it sounds like he's more using the voice that he likes to use and he's more speaking with it.
I do think it's just this episode because I think he sounds a lot better later on. But yeah, this was not a good showcase of his singing voice. Also, when Greg revealed that he was lying about his leg not being fixed, it was mega cringe. I'm sorry, there is no other way to say this, but Greg in this episode, he is big old cringe. He is super cringe. He is so cringy that I get secondhand embarrassment. He's just so pathetic.
Just like Pearl said, he is absurdly pathetic in this episode.
He is absurdly pathetic in this episode. I mean, I understand that it's not his fault, but my goodness, he is so pathetic. Also, my last note, but remember how I said that the more this series lives, the more Greg will be featured as the guardian who gets things done over the gems? Well,
yes.
This episode is the first and most notable case of this happening. There were implications of it before, like in Cat Fingers and some other minor spots here and there, but this is the first like overt thing Greg has over the gems that he fixes, despite it being a complicated gem issue that he really shouldn't be able to fix.
I do think there's a 2-tier layer to why he was the one to fix it, and it was a mix of him needing to take responsibility for his actions this episode, and the fact that they just wanted to do a duct tape joke because Unfortunately, I am in the crowd that duct tape is, for some reason, always funny. I don't know why. I don't know why is duct tape so funny, Alex. Do you know why?
It's such a utilitarian fix to a bunch of complicated. Basically, duct tape is a very it's you can duct tape is very flexible when it comes to fixing things.
It's
It's a super
so
utilitarian fix to what looks like a very complicated issue. Like the juxtaposition is very comedic.
that's true. That's true. Like it tends to fix a lot of things that feels like literal band-aid solutions of just putting duct tape on it. And the more duct tape you use, the funnier it gets to try to fix solutions. I want I want to know if people drew images of Greg like those people playing multiplayer games online, but they ran out of chairs, so they just duct taped somebody to the wall or stealing or something like that.
God.
That's the kind of images I'm expecting to see here. At the moment, I do completely agree with how that could go in the long run. I think it works in this episode for the reasons we gave, and yeah, no, just for the humor of it. Like again, we said where the geode is a giant mechanical, absurd gem construction, and but just putting duct tape over it just fixes the solution, and that's not inherently a bad thing in isolation. And I do
And
like
this
this.
is for emphasis in isolation.
Yep. Uh, but yeah, I we'll just have to see how this goes in the long run. But I personally had a really fun time with this episode. I think I said most of my notes. I did admittedly like how both Steven, yeah, and Greg, we mentioned the ukulele joke, and I made a racist YouTuber joke.
Yeah,
I don't know if that says something about this series. It probably does, but that's besides the
it
point.
does.
Okay. uh, but I did think it was sweet how both of them have their own instruments that they like can play together to try to harmonize. And Alex did mention that Greg's singing voice doesn't sound so good, but I did note that when they actually harmonized, it did sound better to my ears. But what do I know? I have hearing loss.
Oh
um.
no.
Oh
Patches
no.
revealed a very crucial part of themselves to the audience.
Uh-oh. We already talked about being diabetic, and now we have hearing loss. What else can we talk about? Zooms in on the thumbnail of the episode that is very clearly showing our plurality. A very fun fact for this episode, we were very blurry today and just couldn't think of who to front. So we literally went into DuckDuckGo and just typed in roll 1d20 to decide which alter was going to front today.
Yeah, you did.
That's the first time we've ever done that. We want to emphasize that that is not a commonality. Usually, Pandora was fronting earlier today, but like, it just sort of some things happened, so we didn't feel so hot. So we sort of on a whim decided to do that before this episode fronted, and then I just came out because I'm number 8, and I know that because the original Japanese name of my character. Oh, I forgot to say I am Patch's fictive of the character from Ace Attorney Wendo Tornado's alter Patches, whose name in Japanese is Ipachi, who is a well, not IRL, but a real character from a Rakugo stories from Japan, who has the kanji for 8 in his name, and that's why I remember, because I'm number 8 in this system.
All right.
But yeah, I think that's everything. I do think that this was a nice start to the not second season, but second half of the first season episode. That was gibberish. Whatever. I liked it. I think it has a good amount of continuity, and I like to see that in stories like this is just a little bit of continuity. It's what I like to feed on.
All right.
Good, then we're good to go. Talk to you later, everyone. Thank you for existing.
All
Oh, wait a
right.
second. Yeah, our socials are linked below. You can find us, Transpanda, on Transpanda Art on Tumblr and Twitter. And Alex.
Hi, the Patreon will be linked below. Feel free to support us only if you can afford it.
Absolutely. And next episode, tune in for next episode, which will be Space Race. That'll be all for today, everyone. Thank you
All
for
right. Good
existing.
night.
Good night.
If I could begin to be half of what you think of me, I could do about anything. I could even learn how to love like you.